You ever get that feeling, like a punch to the gut when things just don't go your way?
Ugh, tell me about it.
Yeah, it's disappointment, right? And we're all going to face it at some point. So today, we're diving deep into not just surviving disappointment, but like using it,
Mm.
to actually help us grow.
I love that, turning that negative into a positive.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, we're turning to Leo and Gwen. They've got this awesome YouTube channel, Podcast and Chill.
Oh, yeah, I've seen those guys. They're great.
Yeah, usually they focus on helping people learn English, but their advice on handling disappointment, it's seriously gold for anyone.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What have they got to say?
Well, they kick things off with this stat that really made me stop and think.
Okay, hit me.
Research from UC, University of California, found that almost 70% of people, they regularly struggle with self-doubt.
Wow, 70%. That's huge. So basically, most of us are dealing with this, right?
It's a huge relief to hear that, right? Like,
Right.
you're not alone if you've ever felt like down on yourself when things don't go as planned. And Leo and Gwen, they really emphasize that point. Their first big takeaway, it's perfectly okay to feel disappointed. They actually say that trying to push those feelings down, like pretend they're not there.
Oh, I do that all the time.
Right. We think we should be positive all the time.
Yeah, fake it till you make it and all that.
But Leo and Gwen, they say that can actually make things worse.
Interesting. So what do they suggest instead?
Accepting it, accepting the disappointment. Like, that's the first step.
Move to fighting it.
Yeah. And they share some personal stories, to show how they've dealt with this themselves.
Oh, I like that. It makes it more real.
Yeah, it makes them more relatable. So Leo talks about how he used to worry, like, constantly about saying the wrong thing, disappointing people. But then that just ended up making him feel disappointed in himself.
Yeah, it can be a vicious cycle, can it?
It really can. And Gwen, she shares about things like not getting into her dream school or getting rejected after, like, job interviews. We've all been there.
Oh, yeah, those sting.
And hearing them talk about it so openly, it makes you realize disappointment. It's something we all face, no matter what we're trying to achieve.
It's like a common thread. It connects us all in a weird way.
It really does. And so once we accept that, hey, it's okay to feel this way,
Right.
Leo and Gwen, they encourage us to, like, dig a little deeper, figure out why we're feeling disappointed in the first place.
Oh, that's interesting. So getting to the root of the problem.
Exactly. They call it emotional awareness.
Emotional awareness.
And it's all about understanding, like, the root of those feelings.
Okay, so how do we do that?
And they use some great examples. Like, sometimes we set these, like, unrealistic goals for ourselves, or maybe we're comparing ourselves to others, or we let fear of failure just, like, completely hold us back.
Oh, all of those, yes.
Right. And what I found really insightful was their suggestion to look back at past disappointments.
Oh.
Yeah, like, look back and see if you can spot any patterns. Is there, like, a specific situation or a type of challenge that always seems to trigger those feelings?
That's a really good point. Like becoming a detective of your own emotions. I like that.
It is, right. And to help with that process, they introduce a technique from this psychologist, Dr. James Pennebaker.
Okay, what does he suggest?
Journaling
Journaling.
about your feelings, yeah. He says it helps you process them more effectively.
Oh, that makes sense.
They recommend just get everything down on paper, no filters, no judgment, just like raw feelings and the reasons behind them. It's a way to untangle those emotions and really start to understand them.
So you're giving yourself permission to feel those feelings. Just let it all out.
Exactly. And that can be so powerful. So we've acknowledged it's okay to feel disappointed, right?
Right.
And we're starting to understand why we feel that way.
Okay, I'm with you.
What's next? What's the next step in Leo and Gwen's master plan for dealing with disappointment?
I'm on the edge of my seat.
Well, they bring up something that I think a lot of us struggle with.
What's that?
Perfectionism. And they offer a really interesting alternative to that constant striving for, like, flawlessness.
Okay, I'm all ears. What is it?
They bring in wisdom from this guy, Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar.
Oh, I know that name. Doesn't he teach about happiness at Harvard?
That's him. And he's all about aiming for good enough instead of chasing after that, like, impossible idea of perfection.
Good enough. Tell me more.
And it's not about settling. It's not about, like, giving up on your goals.
Okay, good.
It's about setting realistic expectations and recognizing that progress, not perfection, is what really matters.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
So it's about the journey.
Yes. And I love how they use the analogy of a baby learning to walk, you know? They
Yeah.
stumble, they fall, they get back up. We don't expect them to be perfect right away, do we?
Of course not.
And it's such a vivid image, right?
Absolutely.
It highlights that fact that mistakes, setbacks, they're a natural part of learning and growing.
We've got to give ourselves permission to mess up sometimes.
Exactly. It reminds me of when I was learning to play the piano. My finger, I mean, they were all thumbs at first, and the sounds coming out more like a cat, like walking across the keys, honestly.
Oh, no.
It was pretty bad. But I kept at it, one clumsy note at a time.
And that's the beauty of it, right? You focus on the progress, not perfection. And it frees you up to actually enjoy that journey of learning and growing.
So much less pressure.
Way less pressure.
And speaking of learning from mistakes,
Yeah.
Leo and Gwen, they don't just stop at good enough.
Okay.
They actually encourage us to flip the script.
Flip the script how?
See those mistakes.
Yeah.
See them as opportunities to grow.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, they highlight the importance of celebrating the small wins, those tiny little victories that we often just, overlook.
It's true, we do.
They argue that acknowledging those wins, even the ones that seem insignificant, can boost our motivation and our self-belief.
I think that's a really good point. It's so easy to get caught up in what we haven't accomplished yet, you
Yeah.
know? And we forget to celebrate all the little steps along the way.
Right, and they're like, hey, you learned a new word today. High five.
Uh-huh, exactly.
You finally finished that task you've been putting off.
Yeah.
You're amazing. You took some time for yourself, to recharge. Good for you. It's about giving ourselves credit for all those little steps,
I love that.
even if they don't seem like much.
Because they all add up. They really do.
They really do. They create this momentum, fuel our desire to just keep going, even when we face those setbacks.
Yeah, for sure.
They even share this really inspiring story. It's about Sarah Blakely.
Sarah Blakely.
Yeah, the founder of Spanx.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Talk about a journey of resilience. I mean, she faced a ton of challenges, made plenty of mistakes along the way, but she kept learning from them
Wow.
and eventually built a $1 billion company.
That's incredible.
It really is. And it's like a powerful reminder. Success, it's rarely a straight line,
Yeah.
It's full of twists, turns, unexpected detours.
Life's a winding road.
It really is. And often, those detours, that's where we learn the most valuable lessons.
I agree.
Okay, so we've talked about accepting disappointment, understanding why we feel it, aiming for good enough, and celebrating small wins.
Right.
What else do these guys have, up their sleeve when it comes to overcoming disappointment?
I don't know. What else is there?
Well, they introduced this concept. It's, I think, essential for navigating any kind of challenge, really.
Lay it on me. What is it?
Self-compassion.
Self-compassion.
They talk about the work of this Dr. Kristen Neff. She's a leading researcher in the field.
Okay.
And she's found that self-compassion. It's a much more effective motivator than self-criticism.
That's interesting. So being kind to yourself, basically.
Yeah. And I think this is something so many of us, we struggle with. We're often way harder on ourselves than we would ever be on a friend.
That's so true. Why do we do that?
Right. And Leo and Gwen, they illustrate this beautifully with a really simple but powerful analogy.
Okay, I love a good analogy. Let's hear it.
Imagine a friend comes to you feeling down about a mistake they made.
Okay, yeah.
You wouldn't berate them. You wouldn't call them names, would you?
Of course not.
You'd offer support, understanding.
Yeah, you'd be there for them.
You'd remind them that everyone makes mistakes and that it doesn't diminish their worth or their abilities.
Exactly.
So why don't we offer ourselves that same level of kindness and understanding? Instead of beating ourselves up, we can choose to treat ourselves with compassion, especially when we're feeling disappointed or discouraged.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's like we need to be our own best friends sometimes.
Right. And I love how they actually give us some specific phrases to try, like, I'm doing my best, or it's okay to feel this way. I'm learning and growing.
Ooh, I like those. Write those down.
It's like replacing that harsh inner critic with a more supportive, encouraging voice.
Yeah, turn down the volume on that inner critic.
Exactly. And what's so brilliant about this approach,
What?
it actually fuels our motivation.
Really?
Dr. Neff's research shows that self-compassion, it gives us the strength to keep going even when we feel like giving up.
So it's not just about feeling better in the moment. It's about, long-term resilience.
Yes, it makes sense, right? If you're constantly putting yourself down, it's hard to find the energy and motivation to keep moving forward. But when you treat yourself with compassion, you create this more supportive inner environment that encourages resilience and
Oh,
growth.
that's so powerful.
And sometimes that means reaching out for support from others. Leo and Gwen remind us that talking to a trusted friend, family member, therapist, it can be incredibly helpful when we're struggling with disappointment.
Oh, absolutely.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Sharing our feelings with someone who cares can help us feel lighter, more hopeful,
Mm,
and less alone in our
for
experience.
sure. A problem shared is a problem halved, right?
Yeah, it's like taking that heavy weight off your shoulders and letting someone else help you carry it for a while.
It's true. And sometimes just hearing a different perspective can help us shift our mindset and find new ways to approach the situation. Maybe we're just too close to it to see things clearly.
Absolutely. So, to recap Leo and Gren's wisdom here, we can accept disappointment as a normal part of life, understand why we feel it, let go of the need to be perfect, celebrate those small wins, practice self compassion, and seek support when we need it.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. But it's also valuable.
It's like they've given us a complete toolkit
Toolkit.
for not just dealing with disappointment, but actually growing from it.
I love that. They're not just giving us a Band-Aid for when we feel down. They're helping us build a more resilient and empowered approach to life's challenges.
Exactly. And remember that stat we started with?
The 70%.
Nearly 70% of people struggle with self-doubt.
Crazy, right?
So, if you've ever felt alone in those moments of disappointment, remember, you are in good company. We're all in this together.
It's actually kind of comforting,
Yeah.
to know that we're not alone in this. And that even though disappointment is like a universal experience, it doesn't have to define us.
Beautifully said. And what's truly powerful is that recognizing that, the universality of disappointment,
Yeah.
it can actually be a source of strength and connection. We're all human, we all make mistakes, we all face setbacks, but we can also all choose to support each other, offer compassion, and celebrate each other's wins along the way.
Absolutely. We rise by lifting others.
Right. It's like they've given us this roadmap,
Yeah.
not just for getting over disappointment, but for actually like turning it into something, something that helps us grow.
And what I find so refreshing about their approach, it's not about toxic positivity.
Right.
It's about being real with ourselves,
Mm.
accepting those, difficult feelings,
Mm.
and then figuring out how to move forward.
Totally. And they remind us, we don't have to do it alone. Reaching out for support when we need it, that's a sign of strength, not weakness.
It's like that proverb, that African proverb.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Oh, love that.
We can achieve so much more when we, support each other and share those burdens.
So true. So as we wrap up this deep dive into overcoming disappointment, what's the one thing you hope our listener walks away with today?
Honestly, I think the most important takeaway is this. Disappointment. It doesn't have to define us.
Hmm.
It's a universal human experience, something we all face.
Right.
But how we choose to respond to those challenges, that's what shapes our journey.
Beautifully said. And Leo and Gwen's advice, it gives us some really practical tools to work with. It's not just about feeling better, it's about using those experiences to become more resilient,
Yeah.
more empowered.
And if I could leave our listener with one final thought,
Okay, what is it?
it would be this. What's one small win that you can celebrate today,
Oh, I like that.
no matter how tiny? Take a moment to acknowledge it. Give yourself credit for the progress you're making.
I love that challenge. It's a great reminder that even amidst disappointment, there are always things to be grateful for, small victories to celebrate, and reasons to keep moving forward. And by focusing on those wins, we could start to shift our perspective and build a foundation for something truly amazing.